Hi, welcome everyone. I'm Ruth Milner and a member of the UK chapter of the International Light Association. And I'm delighted to be able to introduce Patrick Guy to the viewers. Patrick is an amazing musician and an inspirational music teacher. Patrick has developed a unique combination of rhythmic movement for students to participate in, which is having amazing results for youngsters with learning difficulties and mental health, PTSD. And he's named this technique l.a.m.p, l.a.m.p, or what it stands for is life adjusting memory pockets. And I understand, Patrick, that you actually came across, or you kind of developed this technique by accident. Is that correct?
Yeah, it is actually. It is an accident. The whole thing started when the first venue that I left. Let's go back to the beginning. I left the music industry to take my son out of school. He was struggling, and he was basically a really sharp, bright, fantastic musician. And by the time he was a great go-kart racer, he could read before he went to school, do all basic maths before he went to school. He was just a really cool kid. And then the moment that he hit high school, he just dropped off the planet. And it was horrible to see. And kind of having problems with mainstream education myself, I thought, right, that's it. I'm going to start a music school. And so we started a music school in Long Rugby, and I took him out of school and he worked with me because he was already a great musician. And it was fantastic to have him in the room with the students. He was a great inspiration himself. And then, of course, we got the noise abatement order from the council. And I thought, well, I'll do something else. We'll do something else. I've had a good run. It's been nice, And the parents turned around and said to me, "You can't stop doing this. My son has gone from the bottom set to the top set in everything at school. And the only thing we've done differently is bring him to you for drum lessons." And I had a guy there that had 7 children, and most of which were in the music school. And he just paid for the first 6 months' rent and the deposit on a farmhouse in the middle of nowhere, and that was no small sum of money. He literally just put his hand in his pocket and went, "You have to do this. You can't stop doing this. My kids rely on you." And then they started telling all their friends, "Oh, my son's done so well, he goes to see Patrick for music lessons." And then the pressure started to mount really on me to find out. I mean, I knew that I was doing something different because I've observed music lessons as a young child learning. And obviously in the music industry, I'd met a lot of musicians, some of which had their difficulties, shall we say, and all had their memories of conventional music lessons, and I kind of sussed out what makes a good musician and what doesn't make a good musician, if you know what I mean. It's you kind of figure those things out, and to be honest with you, when you come for music lessons, there's a rule really that you can't really be taught music. You have to just understand it. You have to have something, a special kind of gift to be a great musician. And truth be known, you don't actually really want your child to be a great musician, because one of the quickest pathways to your child being a genius is to die before they're 10 years old, statistically. So, you'd prefer for your child just to be an ordinary, happy-go-lucky child that was just, really enjoying music, getting some benefit out of music, something positive happening, and completely forget the idea of being, a world-class musician. That, you know, it's not particularly great life, to be fair. But I knew that I had to give something of benefit to the individual, even though they were never going to be a musician. You know, it's literally 99% of the people that you teach, you know, are never going to be musicians. You know, but economics means that you can't go, sorry, mate, you don't stand a chance. Go and do something else. You just don't do that. Yeah. So I knew I had to create some benefit. And I knew I was doing things, you know, differently on that basis.
Just going on to so what was it in the lessons itself that was really seemed to be working for those particular, you know, for all those students? It was like life-changing for them, wasn't it? Really,
completely. I mean, you would see them come in to a lesson completely almost bent over with the weight of the world and fear of expressing themselves and just sheer shame at you know, making mistakes or even articulating how they felt. You could see they were broken children, you know, nothing like my son. Once he had been in that environment for a year or two, he was back on form again.
Yeah.
You know, and there were all sorts of things that we were doing. Firstly, I had a motto on our music school t-shirts, which basically said, "What do you want to do?" And that was the biggest question that these kids had ever been asked. And I think you find that life dictates most of the time that our children they get told when to get up, what to eat, what to wear. When they get to school, they're where to sit, what you're going to learn, how long you're going to learn it for. Then you're going to do this. Then you're going to come home. Then you're going to get on with your homework. And nobody really has a lot of time to go, what do you want to do? So it's a little wonder to me sometimes why they get, you know, when they get to 14 years old or whatever and have to choose their options, well, they've got absolutely no idea what they want to do because nobody's ever asked them that before. So this was an environment where immediately they knew every week they were going to get asked the same question. What do you want to do? And I would say point blank, I'm not teaching you anything unless you tell me what you want to learn. What music have you listened to? What's inspired you? Now that's a huge, it's a huge psychological challenge to actually wake up every day and decide what you want to do. And I think that I was underestimating that at the time. But looking back on it, I think it was quite important. And of course, they would show up, and quite often that they wouldn't be in the mood for playing. You could tell they had the weight of the world on their shoulders, loads of things that had happened in their day that they hadn't been able to communicate to anybody. And of course, I started out by just letting them talk. And of course, the parents would go, "Didn't hear much music going on in there. I'm not paying blah, 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 for you to just sit around chatting," because they just didn't get it, you know. And for me to then say to them, "Well, look, I'm really sorry, but your child needed to talk to somebody," like that's kind of offensive to most parents. Well, you could talk to me if you wanted to talk. Well, no, actually, he's not talking to you. So I didn't want to have that conversation. It wasn't my place. I'm just a musician. That's why I'm saying that all this stuff happened by accident. You know, I didn't want to have that confrontation where I had to say to a parent, well, actually, he really wants to talk to somebody and he can't talk to you. What a terrible thing to have to say to people. So I got into the habit of going, right, okay, I can see what you're doing. Let's learn this simple rhythm on the drums and you can talk to me then. Just play it. Let's play together and you can talk to me. So I would have them do a rhythm. And of course, to begin with, they couldn't play and talk. It's actually really hard. So I'd have to get them into, I started out with a really simple rhythm. And then I would ask them really simple maths questions that after a few tries, they would be able to answer. And then we'd go on to things like spelling, and then we'd go on to likes and dislikes and favorite things to do and all this stuff, so that I would connect together the ability to keep your hands moving and to play this rhythm with all the things that they loved.
Yeah, and I saw a demonstration of the rhythm a few weeks ago on local meeting.
Wasn't she amazing? I couldn't have picked. I asked the audience then that I'm sure there are lots of you that would really want to do this, and a few of them put their hands up, and then I asked again, and I'm sure there's some people that really just the last thing they want to do is get up on this stage and, in front of everybody and do this. And of course, I could see these two. I had an option of two girls basically, I chose her. I don't know why I chose her, but you could just see that she was the last person that wanted to get up on that stage and do that. But just the sheer getting up and doing that is a rewiring situation. You know, you have to choose the difficult task, the difficult path. Just merely choosing the hardest thing that you can imagine, and going after that, or the most difficult challenge and going after that, is a rewiring, mechanism. It's a catalyst for rewiring, more correctly. So yeah, I'm dying to speak to her again.
Yeah. So maybe just describe what you think is happening with the brain rewiring, I suppose, with the fact that there's they're participating in this rhythm, and it gives them the ability to actually completely open up to you.
This is
without necessarily reliving the trauma, which is what is quite difficult, I think, with talking therapies.
Yeah, absolutely. And there were a couple of other things that I was doing that we had. I said this on that night. We had 2 dogs, 7 cats in a smelly old house. And so I was desperately looking for something. And of course, I'd started out with joss sticks, but then by the end of the evening, the smoke would come down and we could barely see each other, and we'd be choking to death, until I found aromatherapy oils. And I thought, wow, look at this. You can get aromatherapy oils to wake kids up. I thought, wow, that's fantastic, to stimulate them. So I came up with a lemongrass idea. So all of this was associated with a smell, and I later on managed to use that smell for memory recall with kids, so that like their worst subjects, that the things that they really hated, we would just get them to rehearse or to revise with that smell all over their books, and then on the exam day we'd add that smell to their wrists and or on their clothing, and they'd go into the exam, and we've seen 60% improvement. Wow. Just from using that smell. And I found out a lot later. I mean, during lockdown, you see, I thought, well, what am I going to use this time for? I'm going to really delve into neurology and evolutionary biology and everything, psychology, everything that I could possibly look at to tell me what's happening in these moments, so that I can make it better and more effective. So your question is, what do I think is happening at that point? So I'll tell you how the memory pocket thing works, I think, if you like, and take you through all the different stages of it. First of all, you've got the loud bangs, and of course of drumming. And I'm playing bass as well, which are kind of 2 amygdala triggers. And for anybody that doesn't know what your amygdala is, it's like 2 little almond-shaped parts of your brain connected to your hippocampus fairly directly, and they kind of feed off each other. And when you're in a fight or flight situation where these amygdala are what hold the keys to all those memories being unlocked from your hippocampus, and then driving this cascade of chemicals that rush through your body and put you into a situation where you're either running away from a lion, or you're clubbing a wild beast to death or something like that, you know, and your body is in absolute emergency mode. And your amygdala can be triggered by all sorts of things, obviously, that have got nothing to do with running away from a lion on the savannah. It can be triggered by the thought of shame, you know. It can be triggered by past experiences, just thinking about something. I mean, if anybody wants to try this out at home, when you go to bed at night, just lie there thinking about the fact that this might be your last breath, you know, and that one of these days your heart's going to stop beating, and you know, you'll realize that you can bring about stress in your body just with thought, and that stress can be as huge as actually living the experience. What happens is, when you think you're going to be in a stressful situation and it turns out that it's not stressful. I don't know whether you've ever had a near miss in a car accident or something like that, you know, where your knees go to jelly. Yeah. And you start laughing afterwards, don't you?
Yeah.
You know, you kind of involuntarily laugh, and it's what happens is when you experience those things that could potentially cause you to have a proper fight or flight response, and it turns out that it wasn't a stressful thing, then you get a little shot of dopamine. Now, dopamine is a really interesting, everybody thinks it's to do with reward systems, but it's actually a lot deeper than that. It's more like the motivation to achieve a reward. So what I think might be going on there is that just the noises, just the difficulty of playing the drums is a potential amygdala trigger. And when you realize that you can actually do it, because I teach it in a way where pretty much everybody can do it. It takes time. It takes some people longer than others. I mean, the girl that we had on stage the other night was incredible, wasn't she? She just got it in seconds.
And obviously by the end of it, she looked so pleased with herself as well.
Absolutely extraordinary, wasn't it? Yeah, totally. So the amygdala trigger of just the sounds and that thing of shame, or I might make myself look foolish, all of those things, and then realizing actually that there's nothing to be afraid of, and that you can do it, and there is nothing that is going to shame you in this. You know, you've then got some dopamine going, and the studies that they do with rats, what they find is that they train rats to press levers to get rewards, and when they look at the dopamine release, the dopamine is like this for the lever pressing, and once that reward has been received, the dopamine is tailing off. It doesn't happen like there's no dopamine, press the lever, you get the reward and you get a big shot of it. That's not how it works. It's more like it motivates you to continue. It motivates you, it drives you forward to get to a goal. It's what you need. Yeah, it's what makes you get off the sofa and go to the fridge. When you exactly. So it's breaking into that circuitry, which is kind of cool. And I think it's a huge part of it, because like we were saying earlier, choosing stress is really important. Wim Hof, you know, he's now on the telly. I've been looking at that guy for years. You know, do something uncomfortable. Just choosing the stressful option is a rewiring occurrence, you know, so, or a catalyst for rewiring. So even that in itself is really powerful. So once we've got them into that whole idea that they are safe and performing this rhythmic function, we can then start making the mind work on top of that, where I start asking them questions about maths, English, likes, dislikes, all of these things. And now I've got
favorite color.
Absolutely, favorite color. favorite thing to do, best day of their life so far, favorite people. And I used to do this with them all the time so that I could get them their brains. And the reason I started doing this was because you can't be a musician and be wrapped up in what you're doing. It's all about listening. Even if you're a musician that's reading from a score, you're still listening above. You're listening to everything else above listening to yourself. What you're doing yourself, you're hardly paying any attention to. It's all muscle memory, and it's all, you're thinking more about how you're going to play in relationship to the other people around you and the expression of the music, rather than you can't be thinking about what you're doing. So I was trying to create musicians that could listen by just making sure that all the skills that they had were kind of in that muscle memory part of the brain. So that's why this happened by accident. And now I've added one more thing to it, or a few more things really, but one of them is that the whole idea of that smell. And once I realized that the lemongrass could bring back memories, that you could associate memories with that smell. So now, whilst people are playing, I'm getting them, as you say, to think about their favorite color. I always thought color was really important. I've been kind of laughed at for the last 20 years for saying that no, man, there's something in this, because, well, and as I said on that night, me finding out about the near infrared and how that affects mitochondria and the healing process, it was like a victory, just absolutely wonderful now to find out that people are really discovering the power of color
in all
and the power of light.
Frequency,
absolutely, of course it is. And it's it's extremely important that this information gets out there, because I think it makes a huge difference to people what lights and what colors they surround themselves with. It really does. So, but the idea of the smell and me then thinking about it, because I kept on asking people, like, the only question that you have to answer correctly is, what's your favorite food? And the answer is lemon pie. You got the smell of lemon. And that if you can imagine the lemon pie in your head and smell this and really convince your digestive system that, if you can smell something, surely it must be cooking in the oven, and you start to salivate. We all know about Pavlov's salivating dogs. Yeah. Well, the whole idea of homeostasis, that you've got your peripheral nervous system. I don't want to go into too much detail because it's one of my favorite subjects, but your nervous system deals with things that you can control, all the senses that you can control. And then there's a whole section of your nervous system which is kind of autonomic, which is everything to do with digestion and all those things you do, like your immune system repairing itself, all those things that you do when you're really relaxed. And then the other side of your autonomic system is all the stuff that you do when you're in the fight or flight mode, all those chemicals that come rushing through your body, and the way that cortisol rips through your system, grabbing every single bit of energy and pumping it into your muscles so that you can run away. That system, and they don't work simultaneously. You can't be completely and utterly wound up and have your body going, let's fix the immune system, let's digest this guy's dinner, because it's just obvious really when you think about it. If you're running away from a lion on the savannah, all your energy needs to go into propelling yourself forward or fighting that creature. There's no point. You might be dead in 10 minutes time, so there's no point digesting any food or fixing your immune system. That's not how it works. And that's why it was so important for me to understand a little bit more about evolutionary biology. It's a fascinating subject, and one I think that there's a book, I think it's The Hunter-Gatherer's Guide to the 21st Century, and it's by a guy and his wife, Brett Weinstein and Heather Hine. If you want to find out why you feel the way you do in the modern world. It's a fantastic book to read. And there's also a fantastic book by a guy called Robert Sapolsky, who's my favorite neurologist or neuroscientist. And it's called something like Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers.
Oh,
fantastic
wow.
books.
Goodness.
2 fantastic books. Yeah. We'll just and the beauty about
I'll get those links from you, Patrick.
Yeah, do that, because the wonderful thing about their writing style is it helps ordinary people like me, that don't have a neuroscience background, to really start to understand the principles. They're great writers. And I think the mark of any great writer is to make something accessible, some complicated things simple. And then that's what they do. So that those are books that anybody could read, anybody could understand, and they're great people. So yeah,
you have also brought color into the equation of that.
Oh yeah, absolutely
as well now, haven't you?
Absolutely, because the beautiful thing about you imagine that you're smelling this smell, you're imagining a picture in your mind that is framed by your favorite color. So I'm trying to get you to visualize your favorite color, and in that frame, firstly, you're with your favorite people, you're doing your favorite thing, whatever that might be, because when you're totally absorbed in something, you don't think about anything else. You're doing what people call box breathing, where you breathe in for 4 counts, hold for 4 counts, exhale for 4 counts, hold for 4 counts, and that works beautifully with drumming, because you can use the rhythm to control your breathing. So you've got all these wonderful things connected with this smell, and then of course in the middle of that you breathe in and you're thinking about lemon pie. So what you've created is this beautiful memory pocket around which your nervous system can then decide, okay, we're going to do rest and digest, we're going to do this, we're going to go to that side and hold it there. And because you're doing this movement, the interesting part about the drumming is that people have often heard of fight or flight. But if you look at what happens when, say, you've got a rat in a cage and you pump in the smell of a tomcat, the very first thing that the rat does is freeze. And I think that many of us have experienced this, because when you're in bed at night and you hear a noise downstairs and you kick your partner, someone in the house, you don't literally leap up and start smashing around. You freeze and you listen. And it's the first part of the fight or flight is actually freeze, fight or flight. And it may only obviously happen for a split second if it's pretty obvious what is coming for you in the forest. But if you sat around a campfire and you hear that crack behind you, you're going to freeze before you get up and run, because your mind knows the sound of a twig and the sound of a large log. If that's what stood on that log to break that sound, that means that creature is quite big. And if it's just a little crackle, it's probably something quite small. What other sounds are associated with that? You'll go into this mode where you're trying, what kind of breathing? Is it growling? What else can I hear? And before you decide to go running off, because your body needs just that extra little bit of proof before it starts investing all those calories in your escape. And then, of course, if it turns out not to be a threat, you get that thing which makes you laugh. You get that whole reward, calm you down, which is what kind of settles your system. It cleans your system out. It helps you to then get rid of all those chemicals that have already started. They literally start in fractions of a second. That cascade will start. So when you're doing the drumming, and you've got this wonderful thing in your head, and then I say, okay, so tell me what is troubling you. Tell me about your day. What was this thing that happened today? You can't go into that freeze mode. You can't, it stops that whole cascade of events from happening.
Yeah.
Not only have you convinced your vagus nerve that you're about to eat lemon pie, but you're also rhythmically just forcing your body out of that, well, yeah. I don't want to talk about it kind of thing, you know. And I've seen this I've seen it so many times now, and I luckily have been able to experiment on some people with their consent, who've had who've had real serious traumas. A friend of mine lost somebody in their family during lockdown, and couldn't see them. They were ill in hospital, and it caused an enormous trauma, especially because it was something they thought they should have done more, thought they should have forced their way in to see her, or not let her die on their own. It created enormous trauma, as you can imagine it did. And he went to see a psychiatrist and couldn't speak at all. And when he came here, I got him in this whole, frame of mind with his little memory pocket working.
Yeah.
And then said, right,
that's amazing.
Tell me what happened. And he just sat there completely calmly and walked through the whole thing as if it was just not traumatic for him at all. And then by the end of the conversation, instead of being completely in bits about it, which is what I was expecting, it's almost like it didn't have that emotional effect on him at all.
And has he been able to maintain that?
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? So far, what was happening is that people that didn't know what had happened in his family were asking him about, oh, how's this person in the family? And he wouldn't be able to speak about it. He'd just break down. And he thought he was over it. And it was at that point where he realized he wasn't actually over it, and that it was deeply traumatic. So what I'm waiting for, because this was a fairly recent one, what I'm waiting for is for somebody else to come along and ask him.
Oh, okay.
That would be the true test.
Yeah.
But just the sheer fact that he hadn't been able to speak about it with anybody, and then suddenly sat there talking through the whole thing in great detail, effortlessly, and then at the end of the conversation wasn't traumatized. It's kind of quite interesting.
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah.
So what, with how you see this technique, I suppose, going forward, you said it's still a work in progress. Is that right?
Well, I think it's a work in progress. It would be
great to be able to share this with them. Any therapists that are working with people, individuals that have some trauma, need to release traumas, PTSD, because my goodness, there's been so many people, I think, especially over the last couple of years, that have been, have suffered all sorts of trauma, in isolation. And at the moment, it's certainly in the UK, I think the waiting list to actually see anybody under the normal health system is pretty non-existent, to be honest. It's probably similar in other countries, but it sounds as if this technique is fairly quick.
Yes, that's the thing about it.
2 sessions, maybe.
Yeah. That's the interesting part about it, that it's kind of, And I think there's also a way of people being able to develop this on their own. And what I've been trying to get people to do, and I've had another really fantastic experience quite recently with this now, is that somebody else I knew that had trauma of a past relationship, and it was affecting the way that they behaved with their children, because it's one of the worst traumatic things. With the PTSD studies seem to indicate that there are two basic kinds: stuff that was done to you, and then stuff that you did to other people. And it's the stuff you did to other people that is the hardest one to get over, and also seems to create the worst of the social relationship problems. And what was happening was that the trauma of that relationship meant that she had a lot of uncontrollable behaviors towards her children that she would then regret horribly. And I think the reason I use this as an example is because I think we all think of PTSD as being something that happened, that happens for soldiers. It was a phrase or terminology that was invented after Vietnam. We used to call it shell-shocked before then. And of course, the studies, there were absolutely no limit of people that had not only had terrible things. There's one guy that I read a study about who'd fallen out of a helicopter that was shot down, and certain things in his life, like just driving down a hill in the car, and that motion of his stomach lifting, or going on a fairground ride would take him straight back there. So there was no shortage of people that had suffered those kind of traumas, but there was also no shortage of people that had done some pretty horrific things. In fact, there's a very interesting story, which I'm not sure we've got time for now, about the pseudo kinship that was introduced in the Second World War. It's a principle basically of making a band of brothers, even though in the Second World War, if you look at the American forces, they were less biologically or racially related to each other than they were to the people that they were killing. But of course, when you introduce that band of brothers philosophy into especially into a group of soldiers, then they're always looking at the other as being, they're demonized, aren't they? So that they can bring themselves to do the things that soldiers have to do in battle. And they realized in Vietnam that they had to completely dismantle for the first time this whole pseudo kinship band of brothers, because they were being asked to do such horrific things. There was actually at the beginning, there was such a tendency for soldiers to point blank refuse to do what they were told and shoot the officers, which is why they sat down, came up with this, with the that methodology that we all know about, where you'd be in a gun battle with somebody, and the person on your right was shipping out today, looking forward to going home. The person on your left had only arrived this morning, and so there was no band of brothers, no pseudo kinship involved in that, and they had to go to those lengths to get that war to perpetuate and to keep going, which is kind of horrific thought, really. So that's why there was so much PTSD in that circumstance. But that's a little bit of a digression. I think we're all kind of aware of that, because we've all watched movies where you think, yeah man, those poor people, and you can see like the aftermath of that has been very well documented. But I think that what we're all suffering from is what I'm kind of been calling accumulative low grade PTSD. You know, you don't feel like you particularly need therapy, or you want to voice what's troubling you, but you know you're struggling because you're doing things all the time that you know you shouldn't do. You're saying things that you know you shouldn't do. You know you're stressed because you just treated somebody that you love really badly. And those are the things that play on our minds, apart from, you know, much, much worse sometimes than somebody snapping at us. And what I've been able to do is use this technique so that you're doing these rhythmic movements, collecting all these things together, and then once you've got yourself in that zone where you're completely and utterly relaxed, I get people to think about an instance where they behaved in a way that they wish they hadn't, and to then imagine how they would like to have behaved. What would you like to have done? What would you like to have said? You know.
And this is all while they're doing
whilst drumming. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So you can't go into fight or flight mode and go, well, I'm just not going to think about it, because that's what we do. You get that gut-wrenching feeling when you think about something that you've done to somebody else, or you've said that you shouldn't have said. You get this gut-wrenching feeling, which is obviously your vagus nerve going, you know, there's 500 million neurons in your stomach, you know, that are connected to your brain. It's like they call it the second brain. It's huge. And when you get that stomach churning thing, be thoroughly aware that it means something.
And everybody can drum, can't they? I mean, even somebody that doesn't think, oh, I've got no rhythm, I couldn't do it.
Yeah, because it doesn't matter how slowly you do it.
Yeah.
I mean, it does require a bit of concentration once you've got it. But once you can get that motion going, and you've collected together, and it's the smell, don't forget. Your olfactory system, which is the bit that deals with smell, you've got like these little hubs where everything in your nose starts to get processed. And you've got real, like you have with sight, and I think I tried to explain this a little bit on that demonstration, is that we've got real low resolution versions of all of our senses, and then we've got real high resolution versions of all of them, where we can listen to music and we can pick out an individual instrument, or we can look at a piece of art or you know, look at a landscape and see so much stuff. But then we've also got the real low resolution stuff, which is usually used in a case of emergency, where something comes out of the corner of your eye and your body's already moved to react to it.
Yeah.
Or you hear something and you're already on red alert, and you're not even quite sure what it is, but you just know that it's not something that you can just let go. And your olfactory system, which deals with all your smell, is literally the quickest connection. It's literally one synapse from that to your amygdala. It's faster than any of your other senses. You know, it's funny, that, isn't it?
Yeah.
Shows how important smell used to be to us.
Yeah.
You know, when you see the difference between a rat.
Animals have much better sense.
It's huge. Absolutely.
We've almost, I think, as we've evolved, probably lost the ability.
It's a fascinating subject. Pheromones.
It could be another.
I could be another hour just talking about pheromones.
But
and
the thing is, my idea of getting you to introduce what you've been doing to the ILA viewers is, you know, you don't necessarily need a drum kit, do you?
No.
So in the demonstration that we had the other week, Patrick was getting us to just drum on our knees, you know, copied the girl that was sitting up at the drum kit at the front, but we were just drumming with that technique with our feet and on our knees, as if we had drumsticks. And so it's a technique that probably people can learn to do themselves. They need to. It's a bit maybe I've thought about it afterwards and likened it to EFT, emotional freedom technique.
Yep.
So this was just a little, I guess, just a little snippet of what possibilities you can get with sound, rhythm, and concentrating on that. You don't have to be a musician to do it.
No,
you don't need to have regular drumming lessons to do it. It's very, very simple. But you haven't quite yet documented, or you haven't quite yet got a video demonstrating this, have you, Patrick? So if anyone's interested in this, can they get in touch with you? And
this
is a global audience.
I'd love to talk to anybody that has knowledge of these subjects from a real scientific perspective, without a doubt. And I'm always ready to help people that are suffering from trauma of any description, or just simply want to gain control. I mean, or gain more composure. I mean, we had the incident that we were talking about earlier. I don't know whether you want to mention Chris at this point.
Yeah.
And that trauma that he had about getting on stage, and how literally it took me 3 minutes.
Yeah. So Chris is my son, and he's wanted to perform in some sort of way, either acting or performing music ever since he was a tiny little one. But luckily we came across you, Patrick, and it was only the other week that I actually found out how, within a few minutes of working with Chris, how he said you completely changed his mindset and his stage fright, fear of getting on stage and performing in front of people.
And
in less than 5 minutes.
It was about that. It was speedy, wasn't it? It was totally amazing. And to see him again recently and realize that he's now playing every day, and that it had such a monumental impact on him at that point, it's absolutely lovely. It's heartwarming. And I've literally got hundreds and hundreds of those stories. And it's everything from people with severe trauma to people that just want more control. If you just literally want to be able to go into your boss and say, may I have that pay rise, please? Or you simply want to go and say to your partner, look, this is how I want to be. This is if you want to save something, do something positive where there's something negative that's holding you back, we can sort that out so quickly. That's the thing about it. It's spookily fast.
Amazing.
Yeah. It surprises me every time.
New lessons.
I know. Well, that's the thing, you see. Once you've realized, and I realized this within when I started the music school, it was always going to be about the pursuit of excellence. I was going to make world-class musicians, and within about a month I realized, no, you're not. No, you're not.
No,
because within seconds of them coming in that room whether they've got the ability to be a musician or not. Within seconds. But number one, you're not going to destroy them and tell them to get lost. Number two, you've got to make it work for them. You've got to bring them some benefit to their life for putting that effort in, regardless of their skills. I mean, I think it was Plato that said you should never criticize anybody for making progress as long as they're making some progress.
Yeah, absolutely. You know what? I think not all of us by any means can be actual musicians that can perform and play some music worth hearing from an audience. However, especially as a youngster, participating in music lessons that can still you know, whether or not you go on to play that instrument, you know, music has such a profound effect on all of us, whether you perform it or listen to it. And rhythm is something that we can all join in with.
Well, yeah,
it?
rhythm came first, didn't it?
It's very
rhythm
tribal.
came first. That's what I always think.
It's very tribal.
Yeah, that's why it works, the drumming, because it's earlier than all other music. It's the first form of music that human beings ever came up with.
Yeah.
You know, and it's had that power to unite, and it's had that power to overcome fear. If you think about drumming in the battlefield, you know, it's
marching to war.
Absolutely, I know, and they cottoned onto that one very, very quickly.
Yeah.
So
encourage people to, you know, fight for their country, fight for their tribe or whatever.
Absolutely, yeah. So we don't know how long it's been going on for. I suspect, you know, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of years, that we've tapped into rhythm. That wasn't a pun that I should have made then at all.
Well, it's been absolutely amazing talking to you, Patrick. Thank you so much for sharing what you've developed, and I think it's a case of watch this space. So if anyone wants to get in contact with you about what you've been doing, how's the best way to?
Well, we've got this little thing here.
What I'll do is
we could always I've got
that I'll share that email address with the viewer on the, and
this is as far as we've got so far. We've got a business card.
And
I'll
share that with everybody, and thank you so much for your time. And if we've at some point you might have an update or maybe a demonstration video to
and I don't mind where I travel I don't mind where I travel to demonstrate this. If you can get a room full of people,
or we go as far as Australasia.
Yeah, absolutely. If there's a room full of people, then I will take it. And I think that's what we should be doing, really, is just spreading this information as far as we can.
Brilliant. All right. Well, thank you so much, Patrick.